Chapters 148 to 149. Gaheris confidently escorted Shirou and Artoria back to the inn before bidding them farewell. To their surprise, they found the silver horse wandering to the inn's stables. After saying their goodbyes, Shirou and Artoria headed to their rooms to rest. However, he noticed Artoria sneaking off to the stables to feed and gaze at the horse with sparkling eyes. It was clear that, unlike the ball and fancy dresses, she preferred war horses and weapons. "Artie, don't forget to get some rest early," he reminded her. She lifted her dress and pulled out the sword in the stone, speaking seriously. "Please rest assured I always carry Caliburn with me." He couldn't help but think, wouldn't it hurt to have it poking you like that? He also remembered that she was recently angry with a noblewoman and planned to use the sword to attack her. In fact, if Shirou hadn't intervened, she might have used the sword against the woman. For Artoria, the honor of the knight and the monarch were intertwined. If the king was insulted, then the knight was insulted as well. This was a matter of great importance to her. Despite feeling like a failure as a knight of the king, she believed that remaining indifferent when the king was insulted would make her a complete failure. Shirou shook his head and said, "I'm not asking you to take care of Caliburn, but to take care of yourself. Don't stay out too late." "I understand, my king." He then returned to his room, deep in thought about Morgan's sudden change of behavior towards him. He couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that lingered within him. He knew he had to be cautious around Morgan and avoid making any hasty decisions until he fully understood her intentions. He also reminded himself to be careful with the wine that Morgan offered him. He couldn't afford to let his guard down around her. According to the Arthurian legend, Morgan had once drugged Artoria and used enchantment to take advantage of her, ultimately leading to the birth of Mordred. This knowledge only added to Shirou's apprehension about Morgan and her intentions. Although he had the evil attribute, which provided some defense against enchantment, he couldn't protect himself from physical intoxication. Thus, he knew he had to be extra careful around Morgan, especially when it came to accepting drinks from her. In addition to his concerns about Morgan, he also had to prepare for his trip to Camelot the following day with Lucan. As the capital of Britain, Camelot was a far more complex and dangerous situation than anywhere else they had been. He knew that if he wanted to become king and unify Britain, he would have to participate in battles there. These thoughts weighed heavily on his mind as he prepared for the journey ahead. Furthermore, he understood that becoming king would only mark the beginning of a much greater battle. It wouldn't be just about personal combat ability, but also about leadership, personal charisma, and conflict resolution. The latter aspects were undoubtedly more difficult to master than the former. Shirou acknowledged that he was a complete newbie to this type of battle. Unifying Britain and becoming king was an entirely new challenge, far more difficult than anything he had faced during the Fourth Holy Grail War. However, he also recognized that he had grown significantly stronger since then. To face the challenges ahead, he knew he needed a phased development plan. He was a naturally structured and organized person, preferring to approach tasks with a well-planned and disciplined approach. In a sense, making plans was also a compulsion for him. When he stranded in this place, he had no background or funds. If he wanted to succeed, he needed a clear career and life plan. This was something that professors often reminded students of in college, and even the significance of offering courses in career planning. Throughout his nearly 3-month-long journey, he had been focused on improving his reputation and gaining recognition from as many people as possible. In addition to this, he had been carrying out extensive field research to prepare for his upcoming development plan. And now, the time had finally come to carefully consider the details of his plan. During this era, agricultural productivity in Britain was not highly developed, mainly due to the country's location in a temperate oceanic climate that was more suited for animal husbandry and cultivating juicy pasture grass, rather than simple agriculture. Despite this, the agricultural yield was sufficient to sustain life. However, the main concern was the extent to which the vanishing mystery could impact soil cultivation. Even though the fading mystery had only occurred after his victory over Vortigern, he had already made a mental note to consider its implications. As someone who had taken on the role of proxy king, Shirou was determined to give his best effort. That was just who he was. Once he had made a decision to do something, he would either follow through with it to the best of his ability or not do it at all. Early in the morning, before dawn had even broken, Sir Lucan and his escort team had arrived outside the inn, patiently waiting for Shirou's arrival. It was as if they were butlers waiting for their master. Upon receiving the news, Shirou promptly dressed and headed outside to greet them. "I apologize for keeping you waiting, Sir Lucan." There's no need to apologize, Your Highness. It's an honor to serve you," Sir Lucan replied respectfully. He then invited Shirou to enter the carriage, while Artoria followed close behind on the silver horse. Merlin, on the other hand, disguised himself as a woman and didn't follow along because he didn't want to be seen. Kay stayed behind to keep an eye on Merlin, afraid that he would ruin his reputation. "It's time to celebrate," Merlin said with an enigmatic smile, watching the carriage carrying Shirou departing from the window. "Are you celebrating the king's ascension?" Kay asked. Merlin simply continued to smile, refusing to answer the question. Growing frustrated with the wizard's evasive behavior, Kay pointed his sword at Merlin's neck and demanded, "Spit it out." "Why are you doing this?" Merlin cried. "Foo!" Foe chimed in, observing the exchange between Merlin and Kay with interest. As the sky began to lighten, the streets were still relatively quiet, with only a few people out and about. The carriage departed from Caerleon Castle in a discreet manner and made its way out of the city. Upon arriving outside the city, an army was already waiting for Shirou. He opened the curtain of the carriage and addressed the leading knight, Bedivere, asking, "Sir Bedivere, what is the meaning of this?" "Your Majesty, they have been ordered to escort you to Camelot," Bedivere explained. "I see." Shirou nodded in understanding. When a king is in danger, especially a king from the west, there is always a risk of assassination or harm. Aware of this, Shirou was naturally wary. However, he trusted Bedivere, and, more importantly, he held a higher reputation within the army than Bedivere did. The group departed from Caerleon Castle in a grand fashion, making their way towards Camelot, inside the castle. Morgan took a sip of mead and cast her gaze towards the crystal ball, a faint smile playing on her lips. "So, they've gone to Camelot," she remarked. Turning slightly to look at Agravain, who was seated beside her, she asked, "Agravain, has that woman disappeared?" "It's already been taken care of. At most, they'll only suspect King Arthur, but they won't be able to trace it back to him," he reassured her. She nodded approvingly, admiringly remarking, "He really is a reliable and likable child." Morgan held great confidence in Agravain, who was the only child she completely trusted and could reveal all her dark sides to. In contrast, when dealing with Gawain and Gareth, she had to be more cautious and hide certain aspects of herself. "Are our troops in the vicinity?" Morgan asked. "Yes, they are hidden in the forests along the route." "Humph. I have brought 8,000 soldiers. I dare anyone to lay a hand on a man of House Pendragon," she declared. Her expression was cold, yet alluring, much like a beautiful viper, her eyes possessing a deadly, mesmerizing gaze. He reminded her, "Mother, we only have 1,000 soldiers." "What?" She frowned deeply, her cold gaze turning sharply towards him. "Didn't I tell you to bring 8,000 soldiers?" Bringing 8,000 soldiers would almost completely deplete Orkney's resources. If we deploy them, our defenses will be weakened, making it easier for Vortigern to take advantage, he explained calmly. Orkney is situated in the northwest of Britain, and for the sake of Britain's safety, we must ensure that our stronghold remains secure. If Orkney falls, Vortigern can penetrate deep into Britain's heartland, encircling Wales, including Camelot, and putting all of Britain in grave danger. Does he have the guts? She raised an eyebrow skeptically. We must exercise caution, Mother. Furthermore, whether it is due to the power of the island or individual strength, you are not a match for Vortigern, he reminded her. Tsk! She clicked her tongue in annoyance and shot him a displeased look. She took back what she had said earlier. While this child was reliable, she didn't like him one bit. Not long after Shirou's departure from Caerleon, news of his journey to Camelot began to spread throughout the city. It started with the early rising soldiers who were out for their morning training, followed by the civilians, and eventually reaching the various generals and nobles residing in the area. The reactions from these individuals varied greatly. Some blessed him and expressed their joy, while others wore mocking expressions on their faces. "Arthur doesn't have 3,500 soldiers at all, it's a lie," one person exclaimed, confirming the news. Another individual, wearing a mocking expression, added, I knew it all along. He's just a fraud. How can a fraud become a king? According to Merlin's prophecy, the true king who defeats Vortigern and unites all of Britain will reign. Arthur clearly doesn't fit the bill. What are we supposed to do now? The king ordered us to ambush Arthur, but he's already being escorted by Bedivere to Camelot. It doesn't matter. We're not the only ones who don't want him to be king, and we don't have to make a decision on this matter. According to the latest news, the king himself has arrived with other kings. Is that so? But if all these kings come together, won't the front line be breached by Vortigern? Someone asked. Another person reassured them. Vortigern has been blocked by Hadrian's Wall for the past 10 years. He's likely given up by now. In fact, according to the news, he's already retreated to Londinium. I see. So if the White Dragon has given up, what use is there for the Red Dragon? Someone asked. Exactly, another person chimed in. Tristan, stop playing the harp. There's something you need to do. Don't forget who raised you and don't forget the king's kindness. Tristan halted his hand on the harp and let out a sigh. He responded, I understand what you're saying, but please remember that Arthur is not an ordinary person. After a long journey, they finally arrived at Camelot around noon. Located at the border between Wales and England, not far from the castle of Caerleon, Camelot appeared before them as a majestic white city. Its pristine buildings glimmered under the sun, creating a dazzling sight that left them in awe. As they approached the city walls, Shirou noticed that they shone like jade, and fairies could be seen playing around them, creating a dreamy atmosphere. Perplexed by what he saw, he turned to Lucan and asked, Sir Lucan, is it just me or do the walls of Camelot emit light? Has some court mages put some kind of enchantment on them? Lucan nodded in response and explained, Yes, Your Highness. This city was once a fortress of the Empire, but after its fall, King Uther claimed it and rebuilt it. The walls were enchanted with a large-scale bounded field by court mages led by Merlin. In addition, King Uther invited fairies to bless the city. The result is a wall that is not only aesthetically beautiful, but also incredibly strong. In fact, it may be even stronger than Hadrian's Wall, and could withstand attacks from even the gods of Ireland. It is the last bastion of Britain. Shirou expressed with emotion, It appears that the former king put a significant amount of effort into defending against invaders. The court mages, led by Merlin, cast large bounded fields, and with blessings from fairies, the walls were claimed to be unbreakable even by the gods. It is no surprise that after being transformed into a noble phantasm, it became a super-strong shield in the hands of Mash. However, Shirou knew one thing for certain. Although Lucan had claimed that the city was indestructible, it had actually been destroyed and occupied by Vortigern. However, that story belonged to Artoria's epic, and as someone who had drawn the sword from the stone, he was determined not to let it happen again. Besides, Vortigern was currently blocked by the northern kings outside of Hadrian's Wall and was unable to advance. Moreover, there was one more thing that concerned Shirou greatly. While the White City was extremely sturdy, it was also a perfect place to trap prey. Once the prey was within the city walls, the bounded field could be activated, making it difficult for them to escape. As much as Shirou was pleased with the idea of trapping his enemies, he knew that playing with power always came with danger. The road ahead was uncertain, and caution was crucial. Most importantly, he did not have the confidence to claim that he could handle the large-scale bounded fields created by Merlin and other Age of Gods magi, along with the blessings from the fairies. However, he was aware that his evil could corrupt bounded fields, and even directly erode and corrupt the world walls of reality marbles. This ability ensured that he could protect himself in times of danger. Upon the arrival of the carriage outside the city, a welcoming party was already waiting for Shirou. It was evident that the high-level nobles of the kingdom had prior knowledge of his trip. The group was led by the familiar Sir Yuan, and standing beside him was a middle-aged man with a gentle and friendly smile who was completely unfamiliar to him. However, in his heart, Shirou lamented. Another old fox. Not only that, but behind these two were a group of officials and nobles, most of whom had polite and elegant smiles on their faces. Individuals like Bedivere, whose expression was pure and innocent, couldn't see through their facade. Even Lucan, who arrived at the outskirts of Camelot, skillfully put on a smile. Shirou couldn't help but lament in his heart. He felt like he was walking right into the fox's den. He had no choice but to put on a smile as well. While an animal's smile was a simple provocation, a human's smile was much more complicated. It could be a manifestation of happiness, a misleading cover-up, a weapon of attack, or a shield of defense. Even the most professional behavioral scientists and psychologists haven't figured out all the intricacies behind human smiles. Shirou certainly didn't understand it, and he just instinctively put on a smile. As for Artoria, despite being together for so long, Shirou had never seen her smile. Her emotions were too repressed. "Your Highness Arthur," Sir Yuan greeted him warmly. "It's been a while, Sir Yuan," Shirou responded with a smile, then turned to the middle-aged man standing beside him and asked, "This distinguished gentleman must be Sir Baldwin, am I right?" "Your Highness Arthur, it's a pleasure to meet you." "I am indeed Baldwin," he said with a warm smile. Unlike Sir Yuan's poker face, Baldwin's smile was refreshing and seemed very sincere. However, Shirou couldn't help but feel wary in his heart. He knew that the more people gave off this kind of feeling, the more dangerous they usually were. And like Sir Yuan, Baldwin was one of the 3 pillars left by Uther in charge of palace affairs, which meant he held a high position. Shirou knew he had to be on guard, as people like Bedivere, who were easy to understand, were rare. "Hello, Sir Baldwin," Shirou replied with a smile before stepping off the carriage. After exchanging some pleasantries, he glanced around and asked, "By the way, did Sir Brastias make it to Camelot?" "He's still guarding Hadrian's wall," Yuan replied. Baldwin's dissatisfaction was evident as he spoke up. "Your Majesty is about to take the throne and become king, a great blessing for Camelot and all of Britain. It's rather impolite that he's still stationed at Hadrian's wall." "Caution is necessary," Yuan interjected, "as Vortigern and the Saxons have always had their eyes on Britain. It's been reported that Vortigern's supply line has encountered problems and retreated to Londinium. Several northern kings have declared their intention to attend His Majesty's coronation, yet Sir Brastias still refuses to come," Baldwin exclaimed. "Stability is of utmost importance," Yuan interjected. "I believe he's overestimating his abilities," Baldwin added. Shirou pondered for a moment before interjecting, "Gentlemen, we must also consider Sir Brastias's absence as a measure for the kingdom's safety. The 3 of you are pillars of the kingdom, working tirelessly for its survival, and I deeply respect that." He praised the 3 pillars and deftly steered the conversation away from the topic. "Well said," Yuan agreed. "Your Majesty, please follow us. The banquet is ready in the palace." "Thank you for your hard work," Shirou replied with a smile, following in Yuan's footsteps. As they made their way towards the city, Egwene's gaze fell upon Artoria, who was holding Caliburn in one hand and the reins of Dun Stallion in the other. He couldn't help but ask, "If I may, is this the rumored Night Princess who wields the king's sword?" "Yes," Shirou confirmed. "I've heard that this knight is Sir Arthur's sister," a nobleman chimed in. "Indeed," Shirou replied. "Artoria is my sister." Sir Baldwin then spoke up. "Come to think of it, I recall when Merlin took Sir Arthur from the capital, he was alone." Shirou maintained a calm smile and responded, "Sir Baldwin, my sister Morgan asked about the same thing. I suggested that we ask Merlin about it since my sister and I were young at the time and knew nothing. The whole arrangements were made by Merlin and the king's trusted advisors." Sir Baldwin was taken aback. "Princess Morgan is here as well?" A nobleman chuckled and responded, "Sir Baldwin, it seems you've been out of the loop. Princess Morgan Le Fay arrived in Caerleon recently and even held a grand ball in honor of Sir Arthur last night." "Oh, I didn't know about this," Sir Baldwin said, somewhat surprised. "And did you know that someone purposely provoked Sir Arthur at the ball?" The nobleman continued. "His response was nothing short of amazing. You really missed out." Another nobleman joined in. "Yes, do tell us about Sir Arthur's impressive display. I'm quite intrigued." It seemed like they were praising Arthur's amazing deeds, but upon closer analysis, the topic was being smoothed over like this, wasn't it? "A bunch of foxes," Shirou sighed inwardly. As they exchanged pleasantries, a young nobleman spoke up. "By the way, Sir Arthur," he said, "I've heard rumors about your travels and your sister, the Night Princess. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. But I'm curious, why haven't we seen Merlin and Sir Kay?" "Merlin has been working tirelessly on our journey, and he's quite exhausted. So I gave him permission to rest in Caerleon for a while. Sir Kay is taking care of him there." Artoria followed behind the crowd, flanked by attendants, feeling bewildered by what she had just heard. Merlin working day and night? And Sir Kay taking care of him? It sounded like a blatant lie to her. Another nobleman asked, "Sir Arthur, I heard that you led the armies of various countries to hunt down a ferocious monster in Caerleon. It seems that the soldiers of various countries really admire you." Shirou smiled modestly and replied, "I owe a great deal of thanks to the soldiers who trusted and followed me, as well as to my sister Artoria, who commanded the army. It was only through their collective efforts that we were able to achieve our goal. I couldn't have done it alone." He was unsure of these nobles' intentions, but he remained composed and didn't reveal any information he shouldn't. "Quite a difficult successor to handle." Many nobles cursed inwardly. It was clear to Shirou that Sir Egwene and Sir Baldwin had arranged everything. As he entered the city with its white walls, he was greeted by the enthusiastic cheers of the residents of the royal capital, who shouted his name in unison. The excitement was palpable, and Shirou couldn't help but smile and wave back at them. Sir Baldwin smiled and addressed him. "As you can see, you haven't even reached Camelot yet, but the excitement here is already at a fever pitch. The people gathered spontaneously before dawn just to catch a glimpse of you. Doesn't it make you feel thrilled?" Shirou smiled. "I appreciate your kind words." As they made their way, he acknowledged the enthusiasm of the people and politely answered the questions of the curious nobles, being careful not to reveal any sensitive information. Finally arriving at the palace, Shirou took a deep breath and prepared himself for what lay ahead. He knew that what had happened so far was merely a prelude to the real battle that lay ahead.